I'm 5 years old. Most boys love drawing cars, and I was one of them. My sketches were simple, childish version of cars with square headlights like the BMW E90. One day my father asked me, "Why don't you draw rounded headlights like on our Golf 2?" My childish answer was simple. Aerodynamic headlights are cooler. They look like an aggressive predator. I remember this clearly and have thought about it many times since then. If even 5 years old understand which shape feel current and which feel old, this show how strong the design affects everyone, no matter our age. So let's take a closer look at how design has shaped our emotions, needs, and even desires over the last 100 years. Let's explore how design and creative products have molded us into who we are now. And of course, we will look at why the 80s were angular, the 90s rounded, the 2000s fluid, and we will ponder what's happening with our 2020s and what the 2030s might be. How creative and design products shape generations. We all feel the stark difference between generations. Millennials grow up amazed by technology, believing in a bright, colorful future, like in cartoons, only to realize, as adults, that ads had lied about the perfect world. Now, Gen Z dominates. They were bombarded from childhood with the speed of mass information and the pressure to quickly find their place in the world. This is why they got so stressed about social rankings, something the internet never prepared them for. A generation is shaped by big historical changes and what people enjoy most of the time between the ages of 14 to 20. The lyrics of the songs, key ideas from films, books, or media of the time influence their morals, decisions, and life philosophy. 20-30 years later, the generation steps into leadership roles in the government and business, and those narratives begin shaping history itself. 10 years that change everything. Each period has its own style. The 1920s, especially in America and Europe, is Art Deco. Luxury cast in metal, thin lines, gold, and silk. The 60s are hippie motifs. Bright colors, chrome, glossy paint, rounded friendly forms, and nature-inspired symbolism. 70s, shagginess, chrome again, rough plastic, and natural motifs like in the 60s. The 80s, jeans, lot of plastic, straight lines, oversized glasses, broad shoulders, very broad, and angles everywhere. Angular scooters, angular cars, even angular faces. And the 90s are more natural, rounded shapes in appliances, streamlined car design, and a late decade shift towards organic biological forms. Who leads the fashion changes? Who pushed Sony, Honda, IBM, and Ford towards the straight line of the 80s and then the smooth curves of the 90s? Generational changes occur in a cycle of about 10 years. Every decade, a new generation comes of age and gains purchasing power. Corporations scramble to cater to them or get their hidden desires. Each decade has its own voice of generation. Kurt Cobain, Elvis, Justin Timberlake, and so on. These figures didn't just shape worldviews, they dictated clothing styles. Cobain's grunge, for example, shaped the anti-fashion movement of the early 90s, leaving a lasting impact on culture at the close of the last century. Between ages 10 to 20, a child became a student, then an adult. During those important years, they want clothes, gadgets, and styles that match the trends, to fit into society's current layer. Clothing, accessories, and tech aren't just communication tools, they are the cradle where a child became an adult. Starting around age 13, a teen became the consumer, demanding products that match new era. This is how 70 years of society shift happen. The master product, how one era flows into another. The transition from one era to another often begins with a creative or engineering product featuring progressive styling. Let's call it a master product. The Ford Taurus was such a master product. Launched in '85, It sold briskly from the start. 2 million units sold in 6 years speaks for themselves. The Taurus became a style starter for other major automakers, even before the 90s began. Here are cars before Taurus and here after. You can see how doors became integrated with the roofs, sharp lines became noticeably smaller, and bumpers became uniform with the body. The car itself visually stopped looking like a construction set. The Taurus represents a monolithic form. One body element smoothly flows into another one, without disrupting harmony. That's how the Ford Taurus became a master product, as it facilitated the transition from one stylistic to another. Yes, don't be surprised, such a master product can emerge in one decade, but define the style of the next. The conclusion suggests itself. The phase of an era is created by the boldest product that anticipates people's desires. At the turn of the 80s-90s, such a product became a car from Robocop. It's hard to say what exactly became the master product that defined the 80s, but I can suggest this little gadget, the Sony PPS L2 from 1979. Before it, every portable player looked either like a radio or a thick cigarette case. Instead of the puffy cigarette case form, the Japanese managed to create an expressive product. A window showing the moving tape, angular buttons without smoothing, and even the rounded headphones were given sharp edges. Could such a product appeal to young people? Absolutely. The Walkman likely became the master product of the most squared-off era. But I have another version. Imagine, it's the second half of the 70s. Cities are filled with cars like this. And then appears a masterpiece of automotive design, the Lamborghini Countach LP 400. Its form changed how people thought, not just about cars, but about prestige itself, a good candidate for master product status. But the angular era couldn't last forever. People grew tired of rectangles and squares, and the designers began to understand. It's time to round the lines. Let's explore computer design from those years. Couldn't IBM have made their computer cases with a bolder design in the 90s? By the first half of the 90s, they could have abandoned the tired angularity. But another factor emerges. The risks are too high. What if the design don't appeal to mass consumer? Closer to the second half of the 90s, those who had the courage to take risks and reshaping industry design emerged. This is a company some people hate with all their heart and some just love it as much. This is Apple.
Well, today I'm incredibly pleased to introduce iMac, our consumer product.
Many will say, before Apple, there were plenty of firms already implementing bio design. That's true, but most people still bought beige boxes because global fashion only follows the largest consumer trends. Only the biggest surge in the market demand really matters. It shows which way the era is heading. In the computer world, Apple became that headline act. Let's use their example to examine how a master product is born. Look at how computer design evolved from the 80s. We see very angular forms, and then those lines in the 90s begin to round out slightly. But at this point, everything changes. This product closed a period of the 90s and suddenly brought us into the 2000s. Apple succeeded in making computers several times more attractive with the iMac G3 in 1998. The company moved away from modernism and bet on the bio design, and it paid off. G3 sold 6 million boxes in the US alone, and even more worldwide. Seeing the insane sales of the computers with an Apple logo, other manufacturers began adding futuristic design to their products. And now, it's September of 1999. Apple decided to go all in and release a beautiful 22-inch widescreen display with a very high resolution for the time. To understand what happened, this is how a typical computer workstation looked like in the late 1990s, and this is the cinema display with the Power Mac G4 that same year. Do you even realize how they disrupted the industry with such boldness? In 1998, they launched the style for the first half of the 2000s. And 1 year later, the company defined how products and interfaces would look for the next 10 to 13 years. Cars. Look at these wide-eyed models from the late 90s. Ford Focus, Volkswagen Golf, and Honda Civic. Now a question for you. Which automaker started the trend of smiling cars? I'll be happy to read your ideas in the comments. Here is the third generation of Golf, and here is the fourth. What do we see? The third Golf's headlights look plain and practical, while the fourth already express slight emotion. I hope you understand that the angle of the headlight's upper edge wasn't an accidental decision. We see the same with Toyota. Car designs were changed a lot to look friendlier, and by the early 2000s, almost every car seemed to be smiling. Here is how Ford's style changed from 1984, 92, and to 2002. Sierra squared completely in the angular 80s spirit. The 1994 Focus, serious and professional like a lawyer's suit, but all straight lines tend to curve. And here is the friendliest, the wide-eyed Focus. It looked more like a dog. But the 2014 Focus looked like a cheetah running after its prey. Although it's meant to be a family car, its front has way too many details. The 2019 Focus looked aggressively sporty. A car with a vegetable engine was given hypercar looks. The car's front is so overloaded with the details that it's hard to memorize at first glance. And it doesn't even have 200 horsepower. What does the demand for aggressive car styling say about us? Alright, back to the question. What made car start smiling? Maybe the fifth element by Luc Besson, released in 1997, is full of bright colors, almost toy-like shapes in interior and clothing. Maybe car designers drew inspiration from this sci-fi movie? Not sure, cause the RAV4 came out 3 years earlier. Here are Mitsubishi, Jeep, Suzuki and Ford from early 90s, all with very serious faces. Compare their front with the RAV4's appearance and we again see that headlights angle and slightly smiling expression. Let's compare with the 1995 Kia Sportage. The Kia looks more like a shoe compared to emotionally open Toyota. I will suggest that it was indeed the Japanese company that pushed the auto industry toward happier designs. As a car appealed to women, and since they hold their husbands' wallets, they effectively rule the world. A year later was introduced a more practical 5-door version that fully realized the crossover's success formula. Then Toyota hit the jackpot. Initial planned production was 2,000 cars monthly, but in the remaining half year they sold 55,000 units. The cars were gone in no time. Sales just took off. The RAV4 represents design innovation, hiding expectations, soft interior for replacing old angular ones, record sales. All the signs of a master product are evident. The rule of historical contradiction. World War I. Anxiety and horror hang in the air. Everything is subordinated to industrialization and mechanization. The world is cast iron, assembly lines, and smoke. As a compensation for wartime anxiety and horror, people begin greedily consuming life, expressed through Art Deco fashion. This is luxury incarnate as an immune response to World War I. Live like there is no tomorrow. But the feast ended quickly. The Great Depression in the US, then World War II in Europe. And when the world had recovered from wars, by the 50s, strict modernism still persists in clothing and interiors. No surprise, the wartime generation rules the roost. Meanwhile, their children grow up raised in traditions of hyper-strictness. What might they want? Of course, they want bright colors, soft forms in appliances and clothing. People want more kindness, more joy as a compensation for their harsh childhood. Thus, the 60s became the time of post-war children whose fashion was a response to previous times. The 70s are a logical continuation of the 60s. Cars became slightly less streamlined, but bright colors in clothing and interiors remained plentiful. Music changed, but the 70s weren't a response to the previous decade. But the late 80s, with their angularity and the growing business-like nature of the 90s, strongly resemble a response to the 70s relaxation. So it's time to ask, what will be the stylistic response to our 20s? Future forecast. Typically, the response to difficult historical periods is soft styling, colorful clothing, nature-inspired patterns, natural materials like the hippies in the 60s, and very rounded forms in appliances, interiors, cars, even fonts. Our 20s, conversely, are full of chopped edges and sharp angles. There are exceptions, but the main motive in car and smartphone design remains the same: sharp lines, aggression, velocity. Today's era will be replaced by some new, daring master product that will change everything. What might this product look like? I fear being wrong, so let's call it this simply my fantasy about the future. I suspect we won't see a return to the toy-like quality of 2000s, but within the next 5 to 7 years, some rounding and a touch of biology will be added to the aggressive designs. Here is design that had life added to it. And here are modern smartphones. High chances for smoothing melting ice cube or smoothing amber forms like a rounded premium. Clothing may feature more circular patterns. Or perhaps young generation, influenced by new music, will rush into some new style. But I'm certain, the next stylistic era will be closely tied to tranquility and rounding. Gen Z clearly has a demand for coziness, slowing life space and calm, judging by their love of baggy clothes and vibes in music. The 80s angular, the 90s rounded, the 2000s liquid, and the 20s are definitely sharp. Future generations will surely call our time the era of sharp angles, the sharp edges of smartphones, aggressive cars, and sharp tempers. Someday, this stylistic stagnation will be broken through, and I hope new forms of smartphones, computers, and cars will help us be kinder and face tomorrow with a smile.